Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, much like the rest of us, I suspect I am in recovery mode after a 4th of July weekend, which involved like multiple days standing outside in 90-degree heat and just want to kind of stay hydrated and stay in air conditioning for about the next 3 to 4 months is kind of my game plan. How about you? You doing well?
I'm going through similar things as you, but not because I was outside in the fireworks. It's because JTT watch is over and now our lives have no meaning. Like, sure, you're a parent, and I'm sure there's some meaning there, but really, don't you feel like less of a person now?
I'm sure there will be another commitment and another recruitment coming soon, some drama, some excitement. The nice thing about college football recruiting is it does keep happening year after year. So I'm sure we will find something else to give our lives meaning. Some 5-star defensive end somewhere, some quarterback maybe. I mean, there's certainly, Tony, certainly we can find meaning in something in this crazy world of ours.
You promise?
No, I don't promise.
No.
I'm just saying, like, odds are based on the history, the track record is, I'm sure another recruit will come along at some point.
Well, let's start with recruiting, and we'll get to JT Tuimoloau here in a little bit. But I first wanted to touch on Brenan Vernon, the 5-star defensive end out of Mentor of 2023 class, committed to Notre Dame since our last show. And so that was a guy that I think most everybody had penciled into Ohio State, maybe inked into Ohio State. But then when you were on the ground at the camps there, and you and Bill and Kirk and those guys were started talking to Brennan's parents, you kind of got the feel that Notre Dame was really going to be hard to beat in this one.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little bit of a different kid, and I don't mean like he's a weirdo. I just mean he's very academically motivated. He's I think was the idea of a smaller campus was intriguing to him. He looks like, if you just look at him physically, he looks like Joey Bosa, long hair and all that kind of stuff. And people were asking him, a bunch of reporters around him, and I think people were asking him, what about being kind of the next Bosa at Ohio State. And, he said, like, I'm my own person. Like, I'm not. And you wonder if that's like, go carve a path at Notre Dame where you are not just the third Bosa, the fourth Bosa, whatever. Maybe that's part of it. I mean, it's, losing a player to Notre Dame is not like, why on earth would that happen? Like, it's a good it's a good education. It's a good school. They have a nice football tradition. They probably have an easier path to the playoff coming in a couple of years. I mean, it's understandable. This is not some like huge black mark against Ohio State in recruiting or anything like that.
So Ohio State does not yet have a 2023 recruit committed. And I went back and looked to see how common that was, that they wouldn't have somebody in the next class committed by this point. Because last year, at this point, they had 4 2022 kids committed, and I'm not taking in any of the decommits because they wouldn't have been listed at this point, and I didn't want to go back and look to see who all decommitted. 2020, they had 2 2022 kids listed at this point committed, or 2021 kids committed at this point. 2019, none. But Doug Nestor did commit on August 5th. The 2018 class, Brian Sneed was the first, and he committed to July 22nd of 2016. So there was nobody in 2019, 2018, and 2017. There were 3 kids committed by this point. 2016, 1 kid. And then you get, none in 2015, 2014, and 2013. Joshua Perry was the first in 2022, committing sometime in like June or April or whatever of 2010. So there are no commits yet, Tom, for 2023. It's not atypical, but it's almost atypical based on the last 2 years. It is atypical based on the way the last 2 years have gone. So, Tom, any reason for concern here?
I don't think there's any real reason for concern. I think there's a very logical explanation for why there would be a little bit of a lag in the commits. And I don't think that, I haven't gone to look, but I don't think anyone has 10 kids committed for 2023 yet or anything, right? I mean, there's just the last 15 months or so, from about March 2020 until June 1st, 2021, there wasn't any visits. You couldn't do anything. a lot of these kids are a little behind in their recruiting. I mean, the evaluations from coaches are a little behind probably where they normally would be. The evaluations of schools by players is probably a little behind where it would normally be. They've had 1 month to kind of go and check places out. I don't think there's any concern at all. I mean, I think if you had a lot of these kids able to visit over the, from, the fall of 2021, camp in the summer of 2020, visit in the fall of 2020, visit in the spring of 2021, you've probably got a couple of kids committed, because there's a few people that are probably close to committing. We've heard are fairly imminent. Everyone kind of has their guesses on who the first person for 2023 will be. I don't think there's any real concern. They're in on all the same caliber of players they were before. It's not like everyone else has had the opportunity to recruit over the last year and they didn't. This just seems like everything's going to be on a slight delay. And then the further you get out from this, I would not expect a big delay in the 2024 class, just because those kids now are kind of on that normal visit cycle again and able to kind of get back on track. I think this is just kind of like a 1-year blip for Ohio State and probably a lot of other schools across the country.
I just went and looked to see how many teams had players committed right now. There are only 6 teams listed in the 24/7 with commitments at this point for 2023. 8 total players. So I'm gonna have to side with you, Tom. Here, it's not a reason for concern, and it is just a situation where there's been a lot of strange activity over the last year and a half in recruiting, and so it'll take some time to populate this 2023 class. I myself am wondering, was Ohio State too focused on the 2021 class? And that's how they lost out on Brenan Vernon, Tom. We can get into that later on, but it's like, at some point you've got to move on to 2022 and 2023. You can't keep looking in the rearview mirror. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they're feeling pretty decent about where things stand in the defensive line room right now, with or without Brenan Vernon. So that I don't think they're. I think Larry Johnson is probably sleeping pretty well these days, because you land 2 of the top 5 players in the entire nation, regardless of position, and they're both in the same class and they're both in your room. Like, yeah, it's probably. I mean, as far as these things go, it's probably the best haul. I mean, Clemson did that last year, and outside of that, I don't think anyone's ever done that before. So it's like, I think they're probably feeling okay. And there's probably more than one talented defensive lineman in the class of 2023. And knowing Larry Johnson's track record, he'll probably be in on any and all of them as they kind of get further in their commitment process or their recruitment process.
O ye of adequate faith. The Elite 11 was also this past week. Quinn Ewers was out there, Ohio State's 2022 quarterback commitment, the number 1 quarterback in the nation. He finished in the middle of the pack, did not win a thing. And I think last year when we talked about the Elite 11, I think at that point it maybe jumped the shark for us when Alabama quarterback commit Caleb Williams won it. And I don't know, like 50% was already decided before he ever stepped into the competition, and then performed less than good and then still won it. And it was like, well, okay, you are now the Heisman of high school, even though there's a high school Heisman. I think it kind of lost some luster based on what happened last year. I also don't know that this is really what Quinn Ewers does, because when you watch him play, he's doing all of these, it just looks so, I don't know, nonchalant, awkward, off his back foot, drops it right into a receiver on the run. And you wonder, like, you're not supposed to be able to do that. How did you do that? I think that's more of what he is than a guy that's just going to stand and kind of gets boring throwing at targets when maybe that's not what he enjoys doing. But Tom, again, he loses out to, I believe, Cade Klubnik, who is committed to Clemson, finished middle of the pack. Tom, any concerns here?
Well, I had Mark Givler on the Morning Scoop late last week, either Thursday's or Friday's show, to talk about the Elite 11 as it was still going on. And just sort of one of my questions for him was, as an evaluator, you've got these shorts and T-shirt, like Elite 11 kind of events. Then you have the opening, which is like a 7-on-7 that was over the weekend after the Elite 11. So that's a little bit more like game, but you don't have any pass rush. You're not wearing pads and all that kind of stuff. And then you have actual game film. So how do you, stack those 3 things? Because those are 3 different, they can tailor to 3 different skill sets. how do you weigh those three things in terms of evaluating a prospect? And he said, like, game film is by far, on the field performance is by far the most important to him, especially when it's someone who's playing against good competition. You know, Julian Fleming a couple of years ago, wide receiver, playing like small school, rural Pennsylvania football. You kind of needed to see him against the Elite 11 because, you know, he's going up against a bunch of 5'7" white kids from Nowheresville, Pennsylvania. That's not representative of what he's going to be facing at the next level. Quinn Ewers is playing big boy, big school, Texas high school football, going to the state championship. Like, that is about the highest level of high school football there is in the country. That's probably a better representation of, because that's a real game against good high level competition. That's probably more representative of what the college level is going to look like for him than 7-on-7 where there's no pass rush. Because one of the things Mark talked about was there are guys who just don't shine in those Elite 11 kind of settings or those camp settings, just, you know, shorts and t-shirts. One example he gave was Joe Burrow. Now, Tony, I'm not sure if you remember Joe Burrow. He was a player from Athens, Ohio. Went to Athens High School, grew up in the Plains, Ohio. Ended up going to Ohio State for a little bit, then transferred somewhere. And
Miami?
I don't think it was Miami. I think you're thinking of Tate Martell.
Oh,
he went somewhere. It doesn't matter. Whatever. He went somewhere else. And then I believe he's working somewhere in the greater Northern Kentucky area now, professionally in something. I forget what he's doing. So you've got guys like that. And then you have the guys who like really shine in those camp settings, who then just, you know, once the pass rush is coming, once the lights are on Friday night, it doesn't quite look as good. It doesn't quite look as smooth when you're not just sitting there back there in a clean pocket all the time, just zipping balls to against air. Shane Morris was an example of that. You may remember him, Central Michigan quarterback, great Shane Morris, who also spent some time at Michigan, getting battered by Minnesota during his Michigan career. You would rather have a Joe Burrow than a Shane Morris, and I think that is something that has probably gone into Mark's thinking in that evaluation process. So, I mean, sure, if Quinn Ewers looked fantastic in the Elite 11 and it was just sort of confirmation of what you had seen on Friday nights, like, sure, that's a good data point to have. But you would overall much rather have the guy who looks good on Friday nights when the lights are on and you're playing high level competition than the guy who really looks his best when there's, you know, t-shirts and shorts and you're throwing against air.
and there are guys who excel in 7-on-7, the quarterbacks who excel on 7-on-7, but completely collapse when there's an actual pass rush. And while there are skill sets that you can improve and glean from the 7-on-7, at quarterback, it's kind of a different world in terms of, you know, you don't have to worry about your left tackle holding up. You don't have to worry about hearing stuff. The only thing you need to worry about is like the 3.5 second clock, basically. And you've got to get the ball out. And you don't necessarily have to run around to get it done. And it's there's some differences there. And I've, talked to people who are like, there's a quarterback in 7-on-7 who's really shining out west or whatever. And somebody else say he can't handle the rush. So don't, like, I've seen him in high school. He can't handle it. Don't get excited about him. That has never been the case with Quinn Ewers, because you can see how he handles the rush when he runs out of his pocket and just, sidearm something 40 yards downfield as a pinpoint pass. So Tom, I disagree with you. I think he's going to be okay, but we'll see.
Maybe too soon to say. Too soon to say.
So let's get to let's get to this flurry of commitments at Ohio State this past week. JT Tuimoloau commits July 4th, announces it on television. One of the reasons that it took so long in my mind is I'm thinking that maybe he's working on some NIL type of thing, selling it, trying to, just get some sponsorships in there and make a little bit of money, pay off a house, something like that, which I thought would have been smart. I would have had no problem with that. I don't think that was the case at all. There was no mention of any sponsorships other than Tom. The CBS HQ online that was doing it would talk to him and then go and talk to analysts and then come back to him and be like, all right, JT, we're going to get to your announcement right after these commercial messages. And so, like, even CBS used the opportunity to make money on his announcement, even though he didn't. So I wasn't surprised by CBS doing it. I was maybe surprised that he didn't. When the question was posed to him, like, so when are you going to get to campus? And he didn't really have an answer. And Tom, as we record this now, he's not in the OSU People Finder yet. He's not in the directory. I will ask you for the third time this show, any reason to be concerned?
I don't think there's a reason to be concerned. It's a little surprising to me. I thought for sure he would come to Columbus, be in Columbus on Tuesday, July 6th, which is the start of the summer 3 term at Ohio State, and you go enroll in classes. You take a class or two this month just to kind of, okay, English 101 or political science 101 or whatever capstone stuff you've got to get out of the way to, meet your general ed requirements for your degree. Go ahead and get it started, start working with Coach Mick in the weight room, all that kind of stuff. That was my expectation all along, that was going to be how that played out. It sounds like maybe not. Maybe he's going to get here in a couple weeks. I don't know that it leaves him like substantially further behind than it would have otherwise, because it's not like he's just like sitting on his butt playing PlayStation right now. Like, he's training with a professional trainer. He's, I'm sure, talking to Coach Mick at this point about what they're doing. I'm guessing his trainer is probably talking to Coach Mick potentially, if that's something they're allowed to do, about like what they're working on, what he's going to have to do when he gets to Ohio State. Like, there's going to be a fitness test when he gets to Ohio State. Here's what he needs to do. So he should be working on being able to do this stuff when he gets to Ohio State, whether that's in a week or a month. Again, like, I'm surprised he's not there, but I don't know that I'm concerned. I mean, he's very clearly planning on playing this year. He wants to play this year. He probably knows what goes into playing this year. So I don't think it's a concern, but it was a surprise to me.
Tom, at any point in your life, have you ever been like, I'm ready to rush off to school? Like, if you can wait another month before you have to start taking classes, I mean, I was never exactly devastated to get on the airplane and go back to Ohio State at the end of a summer of working in a grocery store at home and whatever. Like, that was, I was always fine with doing that. And, it was like, oh, well, maybe I should go like a week early. Ohio State's playing Wyoming. And I mean, that hasn't happened in a while. So I think the game was like August 28th or something like that. It was like, well, I mean, classes don't start for 3 weeks, but I mean, I should really go back. Get my apartment set up, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's, you want to be prepared for the start of classes. I think the best way to do that is to fly out and be able to go to that Ohio State Wyoming game and, and then have some time to really get prepared. So I can hit the ground running when classes start. Yeah. You rushed off to a real good one. Boy, that was a snoozer, that Wyoming game, but that's neither here nor there. It happened. It's in the past. We don't need to talk about it anymore. If you want to hear us talk about JT Tuimoloau more, we did an instant reaction emergency podcast. Once he committed, we released that. And if you haven't already listened to that, you can go back and listen to that, and we'll break down what he brings to Ohio State, how much we expect him to play. I threw some over-unders at Tom. He got them wrong. And, that's a show for you to listen to. 4-star cornerback Terence Brooks committed to Ohio State, the number 8 corner in the nation, number 58 player overall. To me, when I watch his huddle highlights, he reminds me of Bradley Roby, and that he can play outside, inside. He hits, he can defend the run. About the same size, 5'11", 6 foot, something like that. An aggressive defender. The 4th cornerback in the class, if we're counting Kai Stokes as a safety. At this point, the cornerback class is so good and so complete and such a finished product, Tom. It's amazing that these 4 guys, they've got them locked in, and now there's no reason I've been asking you, are you concerned? And I'm not going to ask you that here, Tom. With these 4 guys, they've got concerned. They've got committed. There are no concerns now. No concerns with these 4 guys.
Four guys who I'm sure have already secretly signed their letters of intent and faxed them in early. Yeah. This is the one that's like, well, here's what they have right now. What will it look like in December when they can actually sign these guys officially? Like, well, upwards of 2 of them may still be there. I don't know which 2. I mean, all 4 of them have at least some level of drama around them to some degree or another. Turner, who is the one who Brooks, who is the one who just committed, Terence Brooks from Little Elm, Texas, which is the same community as Ryan Watts a couple of years ago. He is probably the most likely to sign, according to our recruiting guys. Like, of the 4, he's the one that they feel the highest level of confidence in signing. Jaheim Singletary, 5-star guy out of Jacksonville. Georgia's sniffing around, Florida's sniffing around, Miami's sniffing around. he came and visited Ohio State at the end of the month, and it's like, well, they feel more confident that they're going to get him. They feel like they're in a better position than they were as he completely shut down his recruitment. Like, well, there may still be some visits there. Ryan Turner from also down in Florida, in Hollywood, Florida, Chaminade Madonna Prep. He's another guy who, like, he's committed. How committed? Like, well, I mean, he's committed. How committed? Well, I mean, he's committed. I mean, it says right there on his profile that he's committed. So, yeah, there's just a lot of like, well, and Jair Brown too. Jair Brown is someone who, originally from Louisiana, been up in Cincinnati. He was someone who has been just kind of rumored, like Notre Dame's kind of sniffing around him. He may be interested in Notre Dame. There's not like, I don't think you'd put, you'd put like tremendous odds on them signing any individual one of these guys. They're not going to lose them all, but you might lose one or two of them. It's just, and that's just like, this is just kind of how recruiting goes, and especially how recruiting goes in this weird cycle where you have it, again, like these guys haven't really been able to take visits, so they're committed, but I have my official visits left. I'm going to go take some official visits, or I might go take some unofficials, especially when you get guys from out of state that you have, the possibility of losing guys. Florida kids may want to go to school closer to home. That's a possibility. So yeah, it's right now, if they sign all four of them, this is a tremendous cornerback class. I just don't know exactly how certain I am that they will actually sign all four of them.
Yeah, they're committed kind of like you're committed to your fourth grade girlfriend, like back in the day, like, it's a Thursday and you're a couple, and then it's a Friday. It's like, no, I want to go, I want to go to recess and play football instead. With Jair Brown there's rumblings about him. I think once Jaheim Singletary committed, like he was looking around, and you wonder now, like, well, you've added two more guys since then. And the likelihood that somebody decommits, I think everybody expects it. Ohio State, maybe by having four guys committed, is planning for there not to be four guys in the class. And then if you have a guy like Kai Stokes who can do either, then like he can plug in for whomever you lose. And if they can sign three of these guys, any three, I think that's plenty good. But if you can keep Singletary and you can, keep just three of the guys, with Singletary being one of them, then I think they would be thrilled. Taking Brooks at this point tells you that obviously they really, really like him, and they're okay with, I don't want to say they're okay with losing somebody, but if signing him loses somebody, getting him to commit ends up having somebody decommit, they were okay with that, because I don't think you can go with a bird in the hand type of thing here, because it's like, yes, the bird is in the hand, but you're not holding it. It's just sitting there, and at any point it can choose to fly away. And so you kind of have to, I guess, gather in as many as you can and hope somebody sticks around. And then, if somebody doesn't and you want to bring somebody else in, they've got a guy that is pretty good at doing that, Kerry Combs.
Right. And this is you go through who the Ohio State recruiting, the coaching staff, and who are the best recruiters on the staff. And it's probably Brian Hartline and Larry Johnson and Kerry Combs in some order. And, I think that's one of the reasons you're not real concerned about, if Larry Johnson, if Brennan Vernon does stick with the Notre Dame commitment, like, well, Larry Johnson is doing just fine. They've got tremendous depth in that room. He will continue to bring in good like, that's not really a big concern. Brian Hartline, we'll get to Brian Hartline's room in a little bit, but suffice to say, Brian Hartline's doing just fine. And Kerry Combs, Kerry Combs is just, there was a real dip in recruiting after Kerry Combs left. And then as soon as Kerry Combs came back, it's all of a sudden like, yep, they continue to bring in really good corners and really good safeties, and they're doing just fine again. So it's not really a big concern. While you were talking, I was going back to find one of my absolute favorite tweets of all time about recruiting. It was it's just a screenshot of a tweet. So I don't remember which recruit it was, but the exact quote is, "My recruitment process is still wide open. With that being said, I am 110% committed to Louisiana State University." Purple heart, gold heart, tiger emoji, exclamation point, #Go Tigers. And our buddy Ryan Ginn, this is from March 3rd, 2018, just tweets that and then just says recruiting is a parody of itself at this point. And it's like, yep, that's it. Like, Yeah, I mean, and this cycle is going to be probably even more like that because you had guys who committed without, sight unseen. You had got, and sometimes the guy gets on campus and, I think JT Tuimoloau was a lot like this, where it sure was very likely going to be Ohio State the entire time. We were being told, our guys were being told, like, this is basically a done deal at this point. He just wants to go to campus and just like be sure like this isn't some like Potemkin village of a school or something. Like, yes, there's actually something behind the facades of these buildings, and like, yep, okay, good. Ohio State actually is a place. Ohio State really is a place. There are actual people there. It's not just some like CGI Zoom scam. Like, okay, good. Now he's in. Like, you're gonna have guys who are just kind of like want to go make those visits right now. So you're probably going to see more commitments and flips and decommitments than a normal cycle at this point, just because I think you're going to have some change, and you're going to have some instability following all that that weird year. But yeah, I mean, if they end up with 2 of those 4 at the end of the cycle, it's probably fine. If they end up with 3 of those 4, it's a really good class. And if they somehow keep all 4 or get 3 of those guys and add another guy that's kind of comparable, that's a phenomenal class. And then 2 years from now, we're not talking about how cornerback is a concern in a depth thing.
Yeah, and I still think they have room to place all of those guys somewhere. So I don't think it's an issue of, well, they don't have enough spots for them, because I think they do. You mentioned Brian Hartline. Let's go to the commitment of 4-star Texas wide receiver Kojo Antwi, the number 84 player in the Scoop 100, which he's, I think, number 115 in the composite. He's in the high 70s or low 80s in the 24/7's own rankings. It seems to me that he'll probably get some bump whenever ESPN or Rivals gets around to their rankings, because, Tom, currently Brian Hartline has, for the first time ever, he's got 2 commitments who are outside of the top 100 as wide receivers. And that's Keon Gray's, and is like 151 or something like that. Kojo Antwi, 115. This cannot stand. And I think we know Keon Graves, who had a great week at the opening there, is going to move up. Kojo Antwi may or may not move up. But if these guys end up out of the top 100, Tom, I have to ask you, for the first time ever, Brian Hartline would sign a receiver out of the top 100. Any reason to be concerned?
I think you need to be message board demand excellence guy. Like, why are they settling? What is wrong with them? This is a disaster. Fire Hartline, fire everyone. Yeah, I think clearly that's the answer here. Absolutely. I mean, you look at Kojo Antwi's offers, and it's like, well, Georgia, Texas A&M, USC, Alabama. That's like that's suggestive that he may be a pretty good football player. And Keon Gray's, I think they got in on Keon Gray's early, and I think now you're sort of starting to see this is, he's not necessarily Jackson Smith and Jigba exactly as a player, but when they signed Jackson, or when Jackson Smith and Jigba committed, I think he was somewhere in the 300s, something like that. And then you saw his senior year at Rockwall High, and it was just like, oh, okay, this kid's doing stuff I've literally never seen on a football field before. Okay, so that's. And he's doing it in big division Texas high school football. Ah, I see. So perhaps he is not the 300th best player in the country. Perhaps, in fact, he is a 5-star player. Ah, okay. Yeah, I think at this point, like, Brian Hartline's going to get the benefit of the doubt. It's not like Brian Hartline is desperately scraping to fill holes, patch over these huge holes in his depth chart. Like, they're fine. Like, they're not taking guys who, at this point, like, I think Brian Hartline has figured out what he wants. He wants guys who can play inside and outside, where you're not taking the 5'8" like water bug kind of guy anymore. You're not taking the 6'5" necessarily kind of guy who's just like purely an outside guy, like a Benjamin Victor or a Jalen Harris or an Elijah Gardner. Like, that's not. You think about the guys who have not worked out in the Ohio State offense. It's the guys who are on like one extreme of that end or another. DeMario McCall really hasn't worked out. Jalen Gill didn't work out. I think there's a reason they didn't take Caden Saunders this year. He's just kind of fits that mold again. Mookie Cooper didn't work out. Like, it's those smaller guys or those much bigger guys that just, they want guys who can kind of move around. You think about Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson has played outside. Garrett Wilson has played in the slot. Garrett Wilson has excelled in both of those places. All the guys they've got committed this year are between 5'11 and 6'1. Like that is like they have a type. That is their type. They have found those guys. They're athletic. They have good hands. They can play inside. They can play outside. They can kind of do a little bit of everything. That gives them roster flexibility. That also makes them real unpredictable. You can't just know, hey, we're really concerned about stopping the guy who's in, their 5'8" guy. Well, he's never going to be the outside guy. He's going to be the slot guy. So you can key your defense around him. If you have Garrett Wilson or Jackson Smith-Njigba, and it's like, well, how do you key your defense around stopping that guy? Like, well, where's he going to be? Like, well, it depends. It could be anywhere. So makes you a lot harder to game plan for. It also makes you, if someone gets hurt, it's not just, well, okay, we have to find the next slot guy because the only person who can play in the slot is the slot guy because we have 6'5" guys outside and we have 5'8" guys inside. Like that kind of boxes you in. It's just like it is very much next man up with the wide receivers because they can all play wherever, and that makes them much more flexible. That makes them much more dangerous as a team as well.
Yeah, you had to find Devontae Smith. He's not just going to be lining up in the same spot over and over again. Mark Givler and I did an emergency Kojo Antwi commitment podcast yesterday, dropped it in the Gives in the Bank feed and also the Buckeye Weekly feed. Tom, I got to say, it's the best podcast I've ever been a part of. It was great. I was the Gives and Mark was the Bank, and it was just emotionally for me. It was a lot to take in. And so we talked quite a bit. And you and Bill then, I think, on this morning's Morning Scoop talked about Kojo. For me, like, he's a really strong kid as well. I tweeted out, like, he's a shooting guard who can give you some power forward minutes. Like, he's a brute. I don't know that he's the fastest guy, but he's immediate, and you give him a quick screen and he can do stuff with that. He can fight guys for the ball. I keep going back to Garrett Wilson when Ohio State signed him. Me and you talked about him as a Z guy, and that's the one position at Ohio State that he really hasn't played, and he's going back to X. And once you see that, you're like, well, body types don't matter anymore. It's how you play, what you can do, where they can put you, and what other things you can do. And so I think when you look at Ohio State's class, for me, I think Kojo Antwi would be the X guy, but he's not pigeonholed there like a Benjamin Victor was, or a Jalen Harris is or was. And I think clearly they like that Brian Hartline kind of being of that type, where he could be an outside guy. He was a slot guy as well when he first started at Ohio State. So there's some familiarity there as well. So yes, another good receiver class. I think there aren't the same concerns that there are in the secondary. So good get for the Buckeyes, and another guy who's going to be trouble, and he'll get a ratings bump. Don't worry, everybody will follow the Scoop 100 and put him in the top 100. Tom, the final bit of news on Monday, I got to get my days straight. Al Washington tweets out a picture of all of the linebackers, and in that picture is now former running back Steele Chambers and former USC linebacker Pala'ie Naoteote. And Ohio State still hasn't announced anything with Naoteote. And really, they would never announce, I don't think they would ever announce hey, Steele Chambers is now a linebacker. And we've had to do this in the past, where I remember years ago, it was Sam Hubbard's on Tim Hinton's boat with the tight ends, and he's no longer at linebacker, I think. And it was, one of these summer team building things. And it's like, well, apparently Sam Hubbard is now a tight end, and you kind of have to, it's not reading between the lines. I guess it's reading between the guys in the photo. There's Steele Chambers between Tommy Eichenberg and, Reed Carrico. So he must be a linebacker now. And gosh, this is something we've been talking about for a year or two or three since Steele Chambers arrived, that he could end up at linebacker. And really, with the way they recruited at running back and the way Mayan Williams has developed, there's no room for a sixth running back. And as we have talked about, when you're playing your long snapper at linebacker in the spring game, you might want to add more linebackers. And so this made all the sense in the world for the Buckeyes. I think it made more sense for Steele Chambers as well, because it's a lot easier to get on the field at linebacker or special teams than it is at running back right now.
Sure. And he's someone who I think as you said, we have thought this move would make sense for him. I mean, you look at his high school linebacker highlights, and it's like, oh yeah, he is like a bad dude on defense. I think he very clearly came to Ohio State wanting to play running back. He got an opportunity to play running back. I think there were some ball security concerns last year that maybe kept him off the field, because when he got the ball during games, he did something with it. He ended up, what was his career rushing average?
7.9 yards per carry.
7.9 yards per carry. I mean, you run that back. You don't need to be a math whiz to figure out, like, well, give him the ball twice and you've got a first down, and you've got a couple extra yards on top of that, and then you give him the ball twice. You're like, I mean, that's 7.9 yards per carry is not a production issue, but that depth in that running back room is just so great that, we've talked about, Master Teague is sort of the incumbent there. You've got Mayan Williams, who's really come on strong at the end of last year and has really impressed during winter workouts and the spring workouts. You got Travion Henderson, who I think we're both expecting big things from this fall. Okay, that's 3 running backs. You need a pair and a spare. There's your pair and a spare. You also have Marcus Crowley. You also have Steele Chambers. You also have Evan Pryor. Like, at some point, like you can sit in that running back room and be a really talented player, but not be able to get on the field. So if he can move to linebacker, that's probably not necessarily a this year thing where you're going to see I don't expect him to just immediately be the starter at will linebacker or anything like that this year. But you got all those guys who, Dallas Gant, Roger Mitchell, Kayvon Pope, those guys are all potentially able to leave after this year. So then you have an opening next year. Can he, you spend a year getting up to speed on the field, and then you're making more of an impact next year. I mean, it's a little bit like G. Scott at the tight end position. I don't necessarily expect G. Scott to be the leading receiver at tight end or anything this year. But then next year when Jeremy Ruckert leaves, then you have an opportunity to be that number 1 tight end. Kind of the same thing with Chambers here. There was a lot of sensitivity around this because we had heard about this as a real possibility. It was asked about this spring, and there's a lot, like, they could not say no fast enough. No. I don't know where you're getting this from. No, he's a running back. No, he's a running back. We saw him at one of the camps standing with Al Washington with the linebackers. It was like, I mean, I don't want to tell you for sure that that's what's happening, but it's, if it was happening, that's a lot like what it would look like. So, I think there was probably, either there was a conversation had, or Steele Chambers just said, like, yeah, look, I also can read the depth chart, and I recognize that there's probably a greater possibility I get on the field as a consistent player and, potentially set myself up as an NFL player at linebacker. So it's one of those moves that makes a lot of sense. I don't think it's going to be an immediate impact thing, but it's something that may, set himself up for long-term success down the road.
I do look forward to him running down on kickoffs and maybe obliterating some people if there are any actual kickoffs this season, or kickoff returns. There will be kickoffs. I have a feeling there will be kickoffs. Will there be any returns? Because of the free year last year, he still has 4 years of eligibility if he wants to use it. I know some people are on the message board asking, is he going to be a bullet? The bullets work with the DBs, so he's with the linebackers, so he's an inside guy, a Will or a Mike, and I still don't know. Like, me and Ross Fulton and I were going back a little bit forth on this. If there will still be a Sam, I tend to think there will be, even though we didn't see it in the spring. But in the way Kerry Combs has talked about it, when we asked him after the season, like, he was adamant, or not adamant, just he was very not forthcoming that the bullet was the way they were going, and also that, no, we need linebackers and we need, this and that and that. So we'll see if there's a Sam, but he's a guy that is can do multiple things at linebacker, and they'll figure out where he is. It's just there's no room at running back for him, and Ohio State's just going to keep bringing more guys in. So this was the best move for him, the best move for Ohio State. Now Teote, we've already talked about him in past shows, what we expect from him. You had the great thought that he could. I was thinking Justin Hilliard type. You're thinking no idiot, Baron Browning. And I was like, okay.
I'm pretty sure I didn't call you an idiot with my out loud voice. I'm pretty sure that was just an internal monologue thing. Am I wrong? Did I say that out loud?
You then edit it back into the show. Like,
oh, okay.
You kept it internal, and then you're like, you know what? No, I want this in the show.
I was going to say, I think one of the reasons we generally work well together is because I'm pretty good about keeping that thought internal and not using my out loud voice. But, maybe it slipped out once. So if so, I apologize. I never mean to say that out loud. I just mean to think it quietly to myself.
And did you apologized out loud? Did you mean to do that?
No, that was also internal. Sorry.
So you do make these mistakes.
One thing to keep in mind with Nao Teote is he's in this weird NCAA limbo because you're not going to believe this, but the NCAA has these stupid pedantic rules about these things. Everyone gets a free transfer, except Naote Ote put his name in the transfer portal before they announced that. So they now have to give him officially a waiver. He's not officially able to play this year until the NCAA grants that waiver. What are the odds the NCAA grants that waiver? Like, well, common sense would indicate it should be basically 100% because it's just really a paperwork thing that, well, he put this in before we announced it. So therefore, I mean, he shouldn't be expecting it. So therefore he shouldn't get it. Like, I mean, that's like the argument against it, which is incredibly stupid. And Tony, what are the odds the NCAA does something incredibly stupid just for, extremely pedantic and idiotic reasons?
82%.
Seems low, but that's okay. He should be eligible. He's just not officially eligible yet, but yes, he's in Columbus. I mean, we saw Haskell Garrett had an Instagram video or something of him like driving, because they're cousins, driving into Columbus with him. I mean, it was not a big secret he was here, but he is not technically officially on the team and eligible for this season yet until the NCAA kind of rubber stamps that, which again, like, there's no reason for them not to do it, but that's never stopped them in the past.
No. All right, Tom, that'll do it. You got anything else before we get out of here?
No, we'll have a bunch more shows. We have we were talking about, like, so boy, this is the quiet time of year again. Like, oh boy, what are we going to do? And it's like, oh well, we have a million good show ideas. So and we have more listener questions to get to at some point. So should be a fun month, and then we're only like 2.5 weeks away from Big Ten Media Days at this point. Like, it's like the season's almost here, and we just haven't had an off season.
Yeah, probably 4 weeks from, 4 weeks from today on the opening of camp, and then boom, like 15 podcasts a day. So
why would we cut back? Why would we cut back if the season's starts? I don't understand.
All right, that'll do it, guys. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. Reminder, check out BuckeyeScoop.com. Go to youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. Subscribe. Get all of the videos. Tons of Elite 11 stuff from Quinn Ewers over the past week. You get stuff like that. You get all of our podcasts. You get interviews with players that pop up, and it's just it's an easy thing. You'll get notified on your phone when we drop something, and it's fun for you to watch. So check that out. And again, if you're not yet a member at BuckeyeScoop.com, you should become a member. And now, Tom, the contest to win Nevada's Oregon tickets is over. Did you see who won that? And did you see what happened?
I did. Yeah. One of our members named Joker Buck won it, and decided instead of taking the tickets, he was going to donate them to service members. I think Nevada may have said wounded service members, but so he won 4 tickets to the Oregon game and ended up deciding to donate those instead, which is really awesome. That was just like a cool way for that to end, because I saw the thread on July 4th. I was like, oh, I wonder who won, and I looked, and then he had that in there. It's like, that was a cool way for that contest to end. Yeah, it was good. Just indicative of the community there at BuckeyeScoop.com. So check it out, and we will be back to you very shortly with another show. Thank you all for listening and watching, and we will talk to you guys later.